The more we micromanage, the more we hold their hands too much, the less we're actually letting them learn.
I'm sorry to everybody that took classes from me maybe 6 years ago because of the things that I used to ask you to do that I don't ask anymore.
Teachers, sometimes we don't have to stop the entire class to mention something that only a few people are doing. So please, teachers, go to the people that need that feedback.
We're teaching Patinha because that's what we used to do when we dance. But then we realize, man, people are spending so much more time when learning bonus because of the goddamn Patinha in the end. They will learn bonus in 5 minutes and then it will take the whole class just to clean the Patinha.
Maybe the physiotherapists, the masseurs, and the chiropractors are not as happy with us, but we are so glad that in Zouk we don't do Cambré to clean the floor anymore. That was pretty much the level of flexibility and strength that you were expected for almost every Cambré from beginners. Like, what the hell were we thinking? Have you ever been confused when a teacher says, "Don't do that," to a move or technique you had previously learned? Why are some classic techniques or movements no longer taught? Why did abertura become wrong and then came back into style? Well, let's find out. Hello everyone, and welcome back to ZoukNerds. In this episode, we are bringing back the history books to explore the evolution of our dance and to dive into the constantly changing landscape of Brazilian Zouk technique. We'll look at techniques we used to teach, such as intense muscle squeezing and constant ups and downs, and many others. Finally, we'll show you how the pursuit of a less tiring and less injury-prone social dance experience has fundamentally changed how we teach, and how changes in the technique have made our dance more inclusive, focusing on natural movement, comfort, and longevity on the social floor. So, let's go! Hello everyone, and welcome back. My name is Alisson Sanji, and let's welcome once again our amazing co-host, Gui Prada. Hello, Gui!
Hello, Alisson. Hello, everybody. Welcome back.
In today's episode, we are going to be talking about something that we bring back the history books of things that we used to do and used to teach, but we don't anymore for multiple reasons. Maybe the dance changed. Maybe we changed. Maybe the music changed. Something has changed, but we don't teach anymore. So this is kind of a travel back in time to think about the things that have changed in the dance community or in our dance personally and in our teaching. If you have been part of the dance community, especially in Brazilian Zouk, you might know a couple of things here and there that you learned maybe 5 years ago, and now all the teachers are saying, no, don't do that. Or things that we didn't used to do, and now all the teachers are saying, yes, now we do it like this. And as a student, it can be very confusing. It can be sometimes frustrating. Actually, a funny thing that just came to my head was that when I was living in Australia, I used to go to Brazil every year for about a month or two to just, recycle and learn what's going on in Brazil, because we're that old and YouTube and social media wasn't that present back then. So we had to go to the source in person and be there in class and maybe have like a video camera with tape inside. Some of you are too young to know what I'm talking about, but my staff back in Australia, in Perth, they would always have these mixed feelings of excitement and dread whenever I came back from Brazil. Because as soon as I came back from Brazil, I was like, okay, guys, let's regroup, let's do some training, and let's rethink the curriculum. Because they would always come to me and say, oh, here we go. Alisson is going to change everything, and now we're going to have to change all the classes and how we teach and how we do things. And we're just going to have to do it because he says that this is how people do now. And yes, nowadays, I think there's less of that issue because of social media, YouTube. You just see things as they happen. Somebody did something in Brazil today, and then tomorrow people are already learning and copying. There's almost no delay. But there are things that I think that comes to the essence of the dance, right? Gui? Like things such as opening versus crossing, things such as up and down in dancing, or our famous, beautiful, yummy Patinha that we don't even really do much anymore.
No.
And what are other things that you can think about, Gui? And what do you think about this evolution of dance?
Yeah, I think I want to start what I'm going to say here saying I'm sorry to everybody that took classes from me maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, because of the things that I used to say, the things that I used to ask you to do that I don't ask anymore. I'm going to start with a simple one. I would ask people to, when they have their hands on their partners, to keep their fingers closed like this. And then realizing that I do this sometimes, but most times I am a little bit more spread with my fingers or fully open. And then realizing that we have more surface, we have more points of contact when we are here versus when we are here. And realizing as well that when we close the fingers too much, sometimes we create a little pocket of air in the palm of our hands, and then they start sliding. So then for some time, I would watch a hand with the fingers all the way spread like this and ask people to close, because I thought it was like, I don't know, more unaware or more floppy. But nowadays I ask people to do exactly what I asked them not to do. So I ask people to spread their fingers and then relax them, right? Just to have that space. So this is one. I want to start chill like that.
Do you know where that comes from? Because I have an idea, but I want to hear from you.
This?
Yeah, the closed hands. For those of you who are not actually seeing the video, you might just be listening. We're talking about like bringing the fingers close together and really squeezing them hard with the thumb. So having like a hand almost as if you're going to slap somebody. You know,
yeah, like
that kind of
like a choppy fingers. Actually, I would ask people to bring their fingers together and then shape the hands to the shape of the part of the body they are touching. My whole thing was just that they would not spread their fingers. And I think for me was like maybe for the visuals or for the intention of the hands to bring more certainty. I don't know. I don't know what I had in mind, but I don't know. When I realized what I was doing when I was dancing, my fingers were closed, but they would also relax, you know? So there would be space between my fingers and my hands from time to time.
Yeah, on that one, I didn't realize that I had a connection between what we did in Brazil and maybe other dance style until I started doing ballroom. So I did ballroom for about 3-4 years in Australia, about 10 years ago. And when I started dancing ballroom, it is like that. I mean, at least the way I learned. Very much close fingers, very strong position of the hand. And as we know, a lot of things in Brazilian dance was inspired by European ballroom. So there were teachers that brought multiple things based on what they saw either on videos or when they traveled and they saw ballroom. And when I was learning ballroom and I learned that, I'm like, oh, maybe this came as a visual influence or maybe a technical influence in ballroom. Because let's put it this way. When Brazilian dancing was starting on the streets, I don't think anybody was doing that. So then it took somebody to learn from somebody that the hands should be like this, to then that somebody teach everybody else in a dance school scenario that the hands should be like that, right? So just thinking about this connection between the street style of dance that we learned that people used to do before our time, and then the dance that we learned in our time, which was a more methodical, more academic dance that we learned in dance schools, versus now what we do when we took that shape that we learned and thought, how can we make this more natural and more comfortable? So we went from as natural as possible without even thinking into let's clean this up and make this as, I don't know, as Hollywood movie or ballroom competition as possible, or even ballet influenced, into now let's make this as human and as natural as possible. So I think there is a relationship between those things with almost everything that we're going to talk about.
Yes, I think so too. I think it's like this adjustments that we make from making something a little bit more polished or a little bit more polished looking, and then realizing, oh, I think that's too much. We are losing the organic aspect of it. Let's go back. I think everything we're going to say has this characteristic for sure. Is there anything that you used to say that you don't say anymore? You used to teach, you don't teach it the same way anymore?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is the relationship with your muscles and your bones. Maybe a little technical here, but hello, we're here at ZoukNerds. For a very, very long time, I was taught, and as a result, I also taught that we should squeeze muscles, right? And you've heard this in class, you may be still hearing this in class, that when you do this, you should squeeze your abs, you should squeeze your butt, you should squeeze the muscles in your legs, or when you're engaging your frame, you should squeeze the muscles in your shoulders and things like that. And that's something that I learned because, I mean, that is the way. But once again, were the people who danced this dance in the early days on the streets doing that? I don't think so. So then it took somebody who learned maybe ballet or learned some other type of movement and dance and took that information that to have more stability, we should squeeze our core, we should squeeze our glutes and so on and so forth, because that generation wanted to clean things up, wanted to polish things up and make it more academic, make it more, well, if you learn to dance from a professional dance teacher, this is how things are, because we're aiming to be like ballet level of cleanliness, ballet level of execution, versus keeping some of that organic, original root of the dance. But again, just like I said 5 minutes ago, this is where we are now. At least myself, I don't talk about squeezing the muscles, because I think the word squeezing the muscles locks the body movement. But I do talk about engaging the muscles as needed. So sometimes we're just standing there. We don't need to do any more engagement than enough for you to stand nice and tall. But then there are moments where you're going to push something. There are moments where you need a little bit more engagement in your lats, maybe because you're supporting a movement or you're supporting a turn or you're supporting some weight and some force, or like squeezing the biceps or, hooking the fingers. So any kind of muscle bone structure and engagement that used to be overdone, in my opinion. That's the first thing that comes to mind. And if you still hear your teacher talking about it, I would probably send them this episode so they can hear from our perspective and maybe rethink. But also I would be more open to feel how it feels in my body. I'm not saying that your teacher doesn't have a reason to say that, but also I think that there are more ways other than just one way to do that one thing, right? So it falls into that category, I think.
You know what I think? There are two things. I think one is we are all trying to solve the same problem. So for example, when people ask, that for me is my favorite, engage your inner thighs. I have a hard time trying to engage my inner thighs. Such a funky muscle to engage for me in my body, But I think we are all trying to solve the same problem, which is to keep the legs together, like to connect your inner thighs and have a little bit of a turnout. So I think we are trying to all solve the same problem. And then some people say engage your inner thighs. Some people say engage your legs. I've heard different ways of asking people to do something to achieve legs together. And then I remember what we used to do at Jaime Rocha. Basically, like we would literally hold a pen between our legs. Just hold something between your legs, So the act of holding something between your legs without squeezing the thing, just holding enough, we are already engaging certain muscles. But because we had a task to hold the thing, we would engage just enough. And Same thing, Jam used to talk about the happy butt and the sad butt. Butt meaning your ass. And the sad one, it was when you would release it and your back would curve backwards. And the happy one is when you would engage a little bit and your lower back would go straight. So we'll try to solve a problem. What was the problem? Straight backs, straight lower backs to be more precise. And then I've heard people say, engage your core, align this, align that. So I think we're all trying to solve a problem. And then we find a way to voice that, to ask people to solve that problem. And I think over time, we change the language for the solving of the problem. For example, engage the lats. And then I realized maybe by engaging lats or shoulder blades, we are actually trying to solve the problem of shoulder misalignment. So you want people to align their shoulders and keep their shoulders down. And then I remember Jaime used to say, keep your shoulder and your ear aligned. He wouldn't talk about engaging. And then I realized maybe it's a problem of alignment and less a problem of engagement, because by aligning your shoulders, you need to hold certain muscles in place so the alignment is kept there. But then later on, I did this class called the Anatomy of Axis, that I realized that the shoulders do have a natural slide forward, but just a little bit. And I realized maybe the alignment doesn't need to be so perfect to the side. It's more like down, you know? So it's more like our process of learning and relearning about the same thing and coming up with a new way to describe a way to solve the problem. And the problem is something that we want the person who is learning from us to achieve in their bodies. Some alignment or, you know, a more healthy way to position their bodies. And I think there's a second thing, my friend, which is maybe in the beginning, we are teaching people to dance based on how we dance or based on how we understand the dance. And over time, we start to teach people how to dance based on how can this be achieved more easily, perhaps, you know? And then I think Patinha is a good example. We're teaching Patinha because that's what we used to do when we dance. But then we realize, man, people are spending so much more time when learning bonus because of the goddamn Patinha in the end. They will learn bonus in 5 minutes and then it would take the whole class just to clean the Patinha.
Yeah.
And they're like, what is a Patinha, however? The Patinha, it's a rock step. It's the half back part basic. So let's just do a rock step. Let's just do the basic. And then you teach bonus in 20 minutes, you know? So this is another thing too, that I think we change the language as we start to see what are the way that I can teach this dance that can bring more people in and not teach this dance in the way that I learned necessarily, you know, because the dance also evolved. So I think there's these two things. We are trying to solve a problem and we are moving from teaching people the dance in the way that it works in our bodies to try to teach people the dance in the way that can work in their bodies. And that changes the way we explain things.
And it all comes also from different influences. For example, the Patinha in Brazilian Zouk, I believe it was a stylistic influence that came from the other Brazilian dance called Soutinho, that also came from another dance that I would more direct towards the ballroom jive that has the exact same movement before it was in Brazil. So sometimes it's just stylistically. Oh, we're doing that. Why are we doing that? Because we need? Because the movement needs? No. Because somebody taught you to do that. And then that was just passed on generations and from teacher to teacher. And that became the way we do things. But then nowadays, for the lucky people who has learned Zouk in the last few years, you probably don't even know what we're talking about. Okay, for those of you, Patinha was just a way to style the rock step of bonus. Just an open and closing of the hips that kind of finishes on a little twist. So it was a little twist that, yes, it was, oh my God, it was harder than just doing bonus itself, or it was harder than so many other things in the beginner's level. So I'm so glad that nowadays it's not part of the expected way to learn bonus, because back then when it was expected, if you teach bonus without Patinha, you're not teaching it properly. You're missing it. It's like 70% there, but the Patinha is missing. A teacher would probably spend a whole private lesson fixing your bonus because you're not doing Patinha. That was a thing, Or another one that we can mention here, Cambrés. Dear Lord, thank God. Maybe the physiotherapists, the masseurs, and the chiropractors are not as happy with us, but we are so glad that in Zouk we don't do Cambré to clean the floor anymore. And this is an expression that maybe it doesn't make sense for anybody who doesn't speak Portuguese, but in Brazil, we say that back in the day, the hair must be cleaning the floor. It's kind of like a broom sweeping the floor, because if you're not touching the floor, if you're not seeing the floor behind you when you do Cambré, you're not doing Cambré. Nowadays, we understand that Cambré is simply an extension of your spine. It can be in the smallest angle to the deepest angle, and preferably keeping it light and gentle for most of the social, and then occasionally you go all the way and you do that Cambré 100%. That was another one, because sometimes when I'm teaching Cambré to my students, they have already done some workshops and they're like, what's the difference between Cambré and chicote? What's the difference between this and that? And this is maybe a topic for later today or another day. But yes, nowadays, because chicote and Cambré is so shallow in terms of the angle, it is hard sometimes to make it clear for the student. So then I bring back. I go like, okay, guys, this used to be the beginner level Cambré back in my day. And then we show it. And for those of you who have not seen it, we're talking about a bridge, okay? Imagine somebody who does gymnastics, somebody who does some martial arts or ballet or something. You know when they do like a bridge, hands on the floor, feet on the floor, full arch, like a full-on bridge? That was pretty much the level of flexibility and strength that you're expected for almost every Cambré from beginners. Like, what the hell were we thinking? I mean, back then, I don't think we were thinking much because we were mostly students. But what the hell were the people before us thinking?
Yeah, there was the Cambré mesa, the Cambré table, that you would do the Cambré holding both hands of the follower all the way down. And you would come from a Titanic, the follower would go forward, and then on the way back, they would bend, hair, sweeping the floor. That was the same Cambré, but now the leader doing it backwards. The Cambré was deep, so the difference between chicote and Cambré was very clear.
Yeah, chicote was more about the effect. Cambré was more about the bendiness. Because, a lot of the times the chicote wouldn't even have the head back then. Even the head back nowadays, it's something that is kind of expected of chicote, but for a long time, chicote was just the hair. If the follower goes chicote hair and then bend back, maybe that's a Cambré, a chicote Cambré.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times the chicote was just coming up, boom, come up straight, no actual back bending. That's another one. And now maybe going back into the roots, the transition between what was the standard lambada footwork, which was always opening, like balanço, opening. And because Brazilian Zouk was very much, once again, cleaned up by teachers or polished to look a certain way or to maybe be a little bit more cohesive with the other Brazilian dance styles. Because we've heard this from historians in Brazilian dances that when lambada was brought to Brazilian Zouk, was very much like dança de salão inspired and adapted. And dança de salão is the Portuguese word for ballroom dance. But as Brazilians, when we say ballroom dance, we actually mean the ballroom dance that is not Brazilian. Otherwise, we say dança de salão, but it's just the English translation. So when they brought to the Brazilian dança de salão schools in Rio and São Paulo, they were like, okay, what if we do the bolero basic? What if we do this like viradinha from bolero, which didn't exist in lambada? Because lambada was mostly opening. And in bolero, you turn and cross. You rock step. So some of these things were just like, okay, let's make this dance a little more familiar for everybody who already know these dance styles. So then we can also teach them this dance with a little bit of a blend and a mix. So I think there's that too, because for quite a while in Brazilian Zouk, it was kind of like the wrong technique to open versus there are moments where you open and there's a reason to opening. Opening was almost for some teachers like, no, you don't know this dance if you're opening all the time. But then what if you're dancing more expansive, more like outwards? Then opening made sense. But now, in the black and white eras of Brazilian Zouk, that was just right or wrong. Now, thankfully, we understand that it just depends.
Yeah. When I started teaching in 2017, I was fresh as a teacher. So everything I knew was what I learned back in the day. And then I realized that people are crossing all the time. They're crossing. Like, what is happening? People, why are you crossing all the time? Because I was so used to open to the side. Like you open, side opening, simple turn, side opening, Sotin, side opening. You side opening all day. Then over time, I started understanding the benefits of the crossing to the point that I started modifying my teaching to also embrace the crossing more, but still acknowledging that the side exists and the side has its value. Because I remember when I was dancing Brazilian Zouk back in the day, when it was called Zouk Lambada, that we were side opening all the time. There was always this push and pull thing. Go away and go, and go away and go. Which sometimes we would really exaggerate and would really open away and go, open away. After the fourth song, my friends, I was drenched. I was so tired because there was so much. The Sotin was crazy because the Sotin was like the opening in forró, the Sotin forró that you side open. However, with the Zouk rhythm, it was more effort, a lot more effort. So I understood the value of the crossing in the sense that you don't move your axis away and then come back and then away and then come back. So the axes are stable. So then I embraced the crossing. The thing is that I think I embraced the crossing too much. And then I needed to scale back to like, look, in these situations here, you can step to the side, So it's that thing that we keep moving back and forward because there are things that I modified or that I used to say that I don't say anymore because of how students would interpret what I said. So I remember I used to say that in the posture, when we are standing up to dance in Brazilian Zouk, we have the hip slightly projected forward, but not projected forward, not pushing the hip forward, but the hip is available. It's right there. Then I realized that people started to tirelessly seek each other's hips. So there will be this pushing into each other off the hips. And then they would say, no, but you told me to do that. And I said, no. I didn't tell you to push your hip on your part. I told you for your hip is there. Like, so the way you position in your posture, your hip bone, it's there, it's open. And then again, I did more classes about what is the neutral posture, the meaning of bone stacking, and understanding that in the neutral posture, the neutral position, your hips not forward, your hips not in front of or aligned with your rib cage necessarily. So modified the teaching to say that the hips will connect when you adjust, when you go down, when you flex your knee, and when you actually project it forward, but not in its neutral form. So that's one thing that I modified because of how students would interpret it. The other thing, the matter of knees bent, that's another thing that modified as well. Realizing whenever you say bend the knee, the student will like bend 3 times or twice as much. So we need to say breathing, the knee that breathes or the knee that is flexible instead of saying bend,
Like unlock the knee versus bend the knee.
Unlock the knee, exactly. Yeah. Because of the level of body awareness, the person understands the word bend as really bending. So the lunges were like really down, So then modifying to more neutral knees versus bending the knee. And the last one that I think was maybe one of the things that I changed the way I explain about it because of what happened to me is the rolling of the feet. we would almost like religiously ask people to roll their feet from ball to heel in every single step like crazy. And I did that so much, my people, that I created an injury on my left foot, exactly on the metatarsal, exactly where the foot rolls, because of how many hours of teaching I was doing and how much I was rolling my feet. There was an inflammation there. And then I realized that from all the dances that I do, Brazilian Zouk is the only one that has this requirement. Then I started watching people dance and realizing that myself and other people, we don't always all the time roll the foot from the ball to the heel. Yeah, we use both. So I modified the way I teach to say that you roll your feet from the ball of the foot to the heel to create this sensation when you want to bring this feeling, and you roll the other way from the heel to the ball of the foot when you want to create this sensation and bring this feeling. So just more attaching, we're still rolling our feet, but not always in one way, embracing both ways, acknowledging the value of both ways, and noting that when you do one, only one, too much, you can literally have an inflammation on your feet. So these are, I think, the three main things that I realized I needed to change the way I was referring to them and teaching them, because I saw how students were interpreting it and what happened to me. So the hip projected forward, or the seeking of the hip connection, the bend of the knee, and the rolling of the feet. These are, I think, maybe the three small things, small, big things.
And I think that's a great segue for what I want to say, which is the next few things, the going up and down. So Brazilian Zouk, going up and down, we're down and up, and really going over the hill, down the hill, over the hill, down the hill. It's something that we don't teach anymore so much. We do. With social dancing, we do it. But we do it as an expression of flavor or of dynamic or something specific to that moment, not something that we do every single basic, every single lateral. And I think a lot of what we're talking about here has been a blessing, like a blessing in disguise. I think that's what they say. Has been a blessing in disguise because of the pursuit for more comfortable dancing, for a dancing that is not so tiring or that doesn't wear your body out so much. Okay, so the Cambré mesa, the Cambré bridge, the ups and downs, the overbending, the opening all the time in Sotinho. Oh my God, like all of this was probably contributing to the fact that we could only dance one dance per person, like one song per person, because you had to have a break. You absolutely had to have a break. Like to do two songs, both of you would absolutely have to sit down because it was just too much. Imagine like a demo level of intention and energy and power for every single dance of the night. That was it. But nowadays, you can dance Zouk, and bro, you can just dance a whole song so nice, so chill, and not even sweat, because you're just being as natural, or as organic, and as comfortable as possible. Maybe not everybody, because like I sweat even just standing still, but the meaning of like working hard, yeah? So we don't have to work so hard within those 3 minutes. We can just like over time build that dance up into something more intense with higher energy and complexity, and then bring it down and have a little bit more chill, and then bring it up again, because we have multiple songs to dance and we don't have to cram everything over one song. And again, another topic for another day. One dance, multiple dances, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. How long is too long? How long is long enough? But I think a lot of the things that we are talking about here, they came from that pursuit to make the dance less tiring, less injury prone, and most importantly, And this is something that Gui and I, we agree so much whenever we're talking about what technique to teach. Inclusivity. What type of technique can most bodies, most people, most heights, and body shapes and sizes do in the social? Because bringing back the days of tangling movements and pretzel movements, that canceled out a lot of people in the community because they didn't have flexibility or the height or the body type to do those movements with anybody.
It canceled me out.
Yes.
Yeah,
People
it
who
canceled
have
me
dislocated shoulders.
Yes, couldn't.
So then every time we're thinking about, should we teach this, should we teach that, we're thinking about it. Even 2 weeks ago, I was in Germany teaching with my beautiful partner, Christina, and we were teaching a challenge class where we were going to do some like pretzels. Pretzels, for those of you who don't know this terminology, is kind of tangly movements. Think about like tangling your shoelace. That's kind of like what it feels like. But as we were preparing for the class, we were discussing, like how many people can actually do this variation. Yeah, maybe not so many people. Okay, so let's not teach that one. Let's make one and let's think about different ways that we can connect this movement to the other one that we wanted to go that doesn't cancel out people in the class. And thankfully, that has been something that we've done in Brazilian Zouk. And I think that has really helped the community to grow. I think a lot of those things that we're talking about here today, things that we used to do and we don't do anymore, is in that pursuit for comfort, pursuit of inclusivity, pursuit of just a healthier body.
Yeah, it's basically we didn't know better, I think. We just didn't know better. And our curiosity and observation led us to change the way we teach and the way we address things, because we were noticing that what we were saying was having an impact that we didn't anticipate, or creating the opposite of what our intention was. So I'll give another very good example. Let's talk about peão. Peão. So I had this weird experience in a private lesson once that the person was doing peão with me, and it was feeling very strange because this person was at any cost trying to maintain his legs connected to mine. And then it was throwing us off a little bit. And then I don't know what I asked him or what I said, but he said he was trying to do what I told him to do in class. And then I was like, oh my God, what did I tell you to do? And he said, to keep this connection with the leg and stuff like that. With the right leg, and then right leg with right leg. And then I researched my memory and didn't remember me saying that. But then I remembered that the person who I was teaching with uses this technique quite often. And then I realized, maybe it was like they did together and then this happened, And then I started to modify what I say about peão, because in that research for the right legs to be with the right leg, that's actually quite challenging to do, So, and then it depends on the amount of power you want to have, the amount of whoosh you want to create, the amount of turn you want to have. So there's a lot of modifications. So nowadays, when I talk about peão, I basically teach 3 different possibilities and talk about 3 different things and talk about this person will ask you to do this person will ask you to do this person has to do this. For our purposes right here, right now, that we are doing just 1 360 and go back to the mirror. You don't need all that. We need just as much, So again, we didn't know better. And we saw the impact of what we were saying to students. So if I could give an advice for those who are listening and are teaching, really intentionally and with a high level of engagement, observe and feel the impacts of what you say. Bend the knee, engage this, connect that, seek this, and see how that impacts the experience of the dance. It's really, really insightful when you observe that.
Yeah, and sometimes we don't realize that, I didn't realize for a long time that a lot of students are very literal, okay?
Yes, oh my God, very.
Okay, so here's my feedback to you guys, dancers, students, and teachers. Sometimes we don't have to stop the entire class to mention something that only a few people are doing. I would rather play another song and go to those people and give that feedback. Because especially the people who are very literal, they might already be doing it good. And then you stop the class and say, everybody, come on, guys, we need to like stretch those steps and take bigger steps. But in fact, you only stopped because maybe you saw 2 or 3 of the students doing it. And now the people who are doing it good, especially the people who take things literally, they're going to start overdoing it. They're going to start overdoing it. And then, in my experience, the people that you actually wanted to fix, they're not going to be fixed because they're not even aware. Aware. So you stop the class to give a feedback to the people that are unaware. And after that feedback, now all the people who are doing good are doing too much, and the people who were unaware are still unaware. So please, teachers, go to the people that need that feedback. Okay, really. Or sometimes just give another song. A lot of the times things fix themselves.
Yes.
A lot of the times. Give students the time to play and mess around a little bit.
Oh my gosh. This is something super important to mention, I think, Alison.
That we used to do and we don't anymore, yeah? Yes.
We used to do it, don't anymore.
Yes.
I think
thank God.
Something that we used to do it, don't anymore, which is to stop the class or stop the song too early.
Yes.
For example, we just started the new thing and we played the song and we saw something like right away and then we stopped.
Micromanaging.
Talk about micromanaging. Yeah. There are 2 things to say there. Sometimes what just happened at 30 seconds is so bad that you really need to stop and like, okay, guys, come on, okay. I'll give like an example. You spend the whole time talking about shifting weights and then starting the dance when you are synchronizing the weight transfer. And then you play the song and the person just goes like, no, just spend a long time talking about this. Shift your weights. Okay. But if you're talking about like a pattern or something like that, sometimes just let the struggle happen. Let the struggle happen a little bit. And this is something that is being interesting actually, because some people who are taking my classes recently, they have been observing that. It was funny because I was in Bali for the retreat this year, and one of my co-teachers there came to me and said, I'm noticing that you are letting them struggle a little bit longer. And then I said, yeah, I am. Because normally we see the people struggling behind you and you want to right away stop and then, but my people, I learned this from Kelly Hayes, one of my important teachers and informal mentors that I had. She would tell me, let them be a little longer. But she would tell me these things when I was not a teacher, because I was observing as she was doing it and I was realizing how quickly people were evolving in her class. And then she told me, I realized, Gui, that we were holding their hands too much.
Yeah.
We need to let them be a little bit. And then when I became a teacher, years later of becoming a teacher, I remember what Kelly told me when I was not a teacher by just observing her classes. And then, guys, it's a magical process. Now we are doing, I think we told you in one of the episodes, the partner warm-up. And in the partner warm-up, people struggle bus. People are struggling bus. In Portuguese, we say catando cavaco, which is like impossible to translate. But they're struggling behind me. And I'm watching them on the mirror, struggling. But then eventually you see the magic happening. You see them slowly catching up. I just taught MAC, Module 7. And I did the partner warm-up as a tool. And some teachers were there and they also noticed. So you let people struggle behind you? And I said, yeah, let them there. And then eventually they caught up and then everybody cuts up. But we only move on after at least 80% of the classes together, 80, 90%. And then we move on to the next thing. So there is an observation too. If people are struggling to the point that you cannot do anything else, then you really need, now, okay, let's stop this thing here and review this thing.
Yeah, slow down.
Yeah, but leave people some time to absorb. And that's something that our students started telling us too, that they want the rotations not to go so fast. They want to stay a little longer with the same partner dancing to the music. So this almost like impulse to stop at first sight, you saw the problem and you stop right away, I think is another important change that we had to. We see the struggle and then we're like, okay, let them try a little longer. And then we stop if needed.
There's two sides of this, right? There is the side that you can look from the perspective of like, well, if you're teaching me, don't let me do wrong more than once because I don't want to get bad habits. So as a teacher,
Yes.
we're like, no. If the students do this too many times, they're going to get bad habits. But then there's the other side that, wait, we just want you to get a feel for the thing before we go deep into details. Because like how many times, guys, come on, all of you, Zouk dancers, how many times you go to a class and the teacher spends 15 minutes on the prep and you haven't even done the movement once halfway in the class. Halfway in the class, you haven't done the movement once. And then you're going to get to the last part of the movement just before the recap. How many times in that hour did you do the full movement? Maybe once or twice because the teacher's like, oh, sorry guys, we got to do the recap now, but you can practice later. Are you going to practice later? How many people are going to practice later? You know the answer. So our methodology is this. Let's teach the bare minimum first, get everybody to feel it. Okay, viradinha, lunge, simple turn, bonus. We're going to get them through this as fast as possible. Then, okay, now let's work on the next layer. Let's work on having more travel or less travel, more elasticity, less elasticity. Or if we're doing a head movement workshop, okay, now let's get the feeling in the body. Let's move. Yes. Okay. Wave this way, wave that way, weight transfer, boom, boom, boom. Instead of spending the first 15 minutes explaining how to compress onto the ground, rotate your pelvis, and roll your spine one by one. And then by the end of the class, you haven't waved once, right? So that is the idea. We're not talking about letting students do things in a wrong way so they will build bad habits. No, but that's the fear we had. Okay, that's the fear I had for many years. Like, no, if I let my students do like twice, that's going to be there. We're not enforcing bad behavior. What we're trying to do is to bypass the brain first and go into the body, and then go back to the brain, and then go back to the body. But try to get the body as fast as possible, and then the brain later.
Yeah, I think it's more like how early you introduce the correction. Because the problem was the correction was being introduced right away. Like the person tried once and you stop the song. You know, so it's basically like let them try a little longer. And that's the whole thing. I don't even think there is time to embody a bad habit. There isn't time for that. I think the time to embody that bad habit is continuous repetition over months, maybe years. But in the course of 1 hour class, there is no time to embody bad habits. Believe me, there's no time.
Yeah.
There is not even time to embody anything, you know, let alone a bad habit. So I think what we are saying, to be more precise, is how early you stop everything to do the correction. It's almost like you are teaching person a new language and you're teaching them the new words. And you say to them, okay, let's go. Constitucionalissimamente. That's the Portuguese word. Constitucionalissimamente. And the person go, No. The person barely started saying the word and you're already correcting them. Let them try and say constitucionalissimamente a couple times, and then you say slowly, after a couple tries, you did, you know, so it's more the aspect of this, we as teachers holding our anxiety to correct right away.
The more we micromanage, the more we hold their hands too much, the less we're actually letting them learn.
Exactly.
That is my conclusion with the experience that I have today. Okay, so yes, the struggle is real, but it's better for the long term, you know, if you experience. And we didn't learn that way. And from most of the teachers that we learned from, we didn't learn that way. And for a little bit of time, a little bit too much time, we taught that way too. So that's something that we don't do anymore. And guys, let me just be honest here. We could go for another 5 hours because there's so many other things that we want to talk about. But I think we have already told you enough for today. And hopefully this has, once again, given you a little bit more information about the community, a little bit more information about the evolution of the dance and why things sometimes change. And I don't have good news because one of the reasons why I love dancing is because it's constantly changing and evolving. So it's gonna continue. And maybe in 6 months we can do this episode again and we're gonna have another 100 things because honestly, it's changing all the time. So thank you very much for being here with us once again. And as I always ask you, please follow, subscribe, and share and help us grow this beautiful family of ZoukNerds so we can continue doing what we love here and connecting with you guys. And don't forget to share with us if you have any topics that you want us to cover here or any topics that you want us to redo because the way we did was missing something or you want to see a different perspective. We've been receiving multiple already, so we're very thankful to those of you who sent. Very nice. Very, very, very nice. Don't be shy. It may not happen in the next episode because as much as we can, we try to keep things balanced as well as record things ahead of time, but we'll get to it. We'll get to it. We will not forget we have a system here and we'll get to it. And sometimes we just combine them, like one of these, and we put in one episode. So it may not be a full episode, but it'll be combined somewhere. So please continue sharing with us. We love it and we really appreciate it. And with that in mind, thank you very much. I'll see you next time. Beijos, beijos, everybody. Abraços. And ciao.
Ciao, everyone. Till next time.